You're listening to the Life Purpose Advisor Podcast, episode 47.
We're given exactly what we need. So as spiritual beings, here having a certain experience, we've come here to get something on a spiritual level, some learning. And because we're part of this universal consciousness, that the universe will provide for us exactly what we need.
You're listening to the Life Purpose Advisor Podcast.
Life purpose, spirituality, higher calling, personal growth, meaningful life.
We ask the deep questions about living a balanced life of meaning, purpose, and joy.
Passion, know thyself, be mindful, spiritual practice, aha moments, life lessons, balance.
It is time to welcome your host, Angie Swartz.
I'm really excited about the guest I'm bringing on today. Michael Neeley and I have been traveling the path of learning about podcasting together, but we recently spent some time together in Fort Worth, and I wanted him to come on and talk about his purpose. He is a former professional actor and a medieval knight turned writer. We're definitely going to get into that. A motivational speaker, a personal development coach, the author of the upcoming book, The Art of Forgetting. And as we get older, we get better at that. And of course, he also hosts his very successful podcast, Consciously Speaking. It's very good to see you today.
You too. Thanks for having me on your show, Angie.
I couldn't be happier to see you. So let's get deep into talking about what you're busy doing.
So right now, most of my time is consumed by my podcast, which, as you know, is a 7-day-a-week show. And I'm actually even about to launch another 7-day-a-week show, though this one will be in a short format. And the big thing of my show, it's about, kind of like with yours, it's spreading the good word, information about how to live life with more integrity and passion and have better relationships and be on purpose. So that's where I'm spending most of my time.
And 7 days a week is a lot of work. 1 day a week is a lot of work. And you found time to write a book?
Yeah, the book has actually been germinating long before the podcast, and actually even some pieces of the book actually spurred the podcast on. I actually was talking to a publisher about my book, and one of the things as I'm working through this process is we're continually asking, so what's your platform? How many people subscribe to your site? How big is your email list? How many followers do you have? And I realized in this process that any author that's out there, especially if you're a new author, the publishers want you to do the heavy lifting, most of the promotion of your material, and it's so important to have a large platform. And so that also became some impetus for me creating the show, was to just start to grow an audience that would be interested in this type of work.
Right. So let's talk about your podcast. So you're out there, you've been doing really well with it, and the people that you're interviewing, do they have anything to do with what you've written in your book?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've actually had a couple of authors on my show whose books sound very similar. And as a matter of fact, when they sent me their books, I said, okay, I appreciate it, and I'm not going to read it until mine is published, because I don't want to have my theories and ideas influenced too much by outside sources that maybe, I don't want to feel like anything's been plagiarized, I guess is the bottom line of it. But yeah, so I do interview a lot of people who deal with the same type of content in my book, which is about getting rid of our stories, the fiction that we make up about our lives. And I'm happy to go into detail on that if you're interested, but that's the big chunk of it.
Yeah, I mean, we do similar work on that. Why? And some of the recent movie that's out, Inside Out, talks a lot or infers a lot about that. So let's just talk a little bit about that. Why is it so important that we get out of our stories?
Well, the challenge is that these underlying stories that often are running the works on a super subconscious level, that we don't even know that they're there, and they're blocking us or recreating events in our lives. And just to share a personal story on mine, I was in a relationship in high school. I think I was a junior, and a girl cheated on me, and it was very heartbreaking. But, hey, that happens. And a couple years later, it happened again with a different woman. And then I got married, and my first wife cheated on me. And through this process, what happened was I developed a story. I developed a story that women cheat. Now, the only truth to that was, there's no truth to it.
And not only your story, not only do women cheat, but they cheat on Michael Neeley.
They cheat on me. So as I started to analyze it further, and I realized, okay, what's the common factor here? What's the common denominator in all of these relationships? Me. I was the only same thing in each relationship. So it made me start to look at, what am I doing over here? And because what happened is something like this could happen to any of us, and it could happen the first time, the second time, and the third time. But then what kicks in is we start to develop that belief, and now this is where it gets really nasty. We start to attract that into our lives. We actually, on a subconscious level, go looking for it. So it was a self-generating prophecy. I was now bringing women into my life that would cheat on me, or I would perhaps be in the relationship in such a way that would even coax someone who might not normally cheat to cheat. And it all began because I made up what I took instances, facts, and I turned them into a belief, which was the fiction piece. And so that's what I work with people, helping them to erase their story, is separating the fact from the fiction so that they can be freed up to now experience life in a different way.
And beautiful work. I do some of the same. But let's keep talking about you. What cracked the code on that for you? Like, what had to happen for you to realize that you could be different? Yeah,
well, the first thing that had to happen, it had to happen to me enough that it was like a 2x4 upside the head. I'm like, whoa, why does this keep happening? And it forced me to really take a deeper look at it and peel back the layers. So that was step one. And then I had to do the work on the story. And the stories aren't necessarily easy to erase or forget or let go of. And there's a process that I work with clients in this, and that is a way to have them write their story out. Because once you see it in writing, you can start to separate the fact from the fiction. Like, here's what happened, and here's what I made it mean. And part of what I made it mean was that I wasn't worthy of a good relationship. And as you dig deeper into this stuff and you start to go, oh, wait a minute, so I really have this belief that I'm not worthy of a good relationship, and you go, that's BS. I mean, that's the fiction piece. And after working deeply in the story, you start to laugh at the idiocy of what you've created. At least for myself, I mean, I was half laughing, half crying, going, oh my God, I've been living with this crazy story. And once I let go of that, once it dug it out by the roots, really, I haven't had a bad relationship since. I've never been cheated on since, and it's been wonderful.
Congratulations on that. Did you have help?
I did, yeah. So I've always been into the study of ontology and the way we are in the world. And so in this process, I did some work with Landmark Education. I did some work with Tony Robbins. And so there are lots of great education out there and ways to get rid of a story. And so what my work now is kind of a compilation of all the things I've taken from these different arenas of thought around this and then applied my own methods. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And did you ever work one-on-one with anyone, or you were able to figure that out all on your own?
No, I didn't work one-on-one with anybody. It was a process, some of it through reading, some of it through workshops, but ultimately it came down to my own process. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So that's pretty big. Did you ever cheat on anyone?
I did, yeah. Yeah, back in my younger day, and I think part of what happened for me, not trying to make excuses for it, but once it became a part of my belief system, then it was almost like giving myself permission to do the same. Mm-hmm. And which was also just something I'm certainly not proud of. And in that process, it reinforced the belief even further. So that was also
this is what everybody does.
Yeah, and so that was also something I had to work on as well, is just letting go of, hey, this is crazy, it's not okay. And actually, I think that was part of what triggered me to start looking at it deeper, because I always felt like this is just wrong. Like there was a time in my life when I would have never even considered anything like that. I had women break up with me because I was just too nice of a guy, so that was the total opposite of the way I would be. And when I started to become that way, then it made me really think, something's amiss here, something's wrong.
A moment of silence for that is what we can leave there, I think. Let's go back and talk about you as an actor. So I love in your bio that you say that you're a medieval knight turned writer, and on your website you have a picture of yourself as a knight in shining armor.
Yeah.
And you say here that you spent time with Mel Gibson and Kevin Costner and performed off Broadway, and you have some other folks that you worked with here. How was that a part of your journey to get to where you are today, and what was that like? Just tell us about the life of a glamorous knight in shining armor.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, and as a matter of fact, that's part of when I think things started to go downhill for me in a way, because I started my jousting career at Medieval Times Dinner and Tournament down in Buena Park, California, and quickly became the head knight and show manager. And then I went on to open up their other locations throughout the United States and train other jousters. But the situation with that, the glamour side of it is, after the show, you go up to the lounge area and you greet the patrons of the show, and you're giving autographs and constantly being bombarded by women giving you their phone numbers and inviting you out and buying you drinks. And so it was pretty wild. And then after that, I went on to joust for another 6 years at the New York Renaissance Fair while I was pursuing other acting in New York at the time. And similarly, you just constantly had women practically throwing themselves at you. So it was a challenge to not go a little wild with that. But I just want to touch a little bit real quickly on a side note. One of the photos that you talk about on my website, I was actually interviewed by Elizabeth Gilbert before she went on to write Eat, Love, Pray. Or is it Eat, Pray, Love?
Eat, Pray, Love.
Yeah, Eat, Pray, Love. Before she went on to write that. And that was it was at such a different time in my life. And I don't know where I want to go with this other than maybe the fact that all the while, it was almost like I had two sides of my personality going on. So I had this persona that I was being this actor, this knight, this macho, jousting, sword-fighting guy, and I had this other side of me that was observing the interactions of people. And at this point, I'd already started to do a lot of work in ontology. And so I was constantly looking at the interaction. Even though I wasn't necessarily controlling my own, there was a part of me that was observing what was happening. And slowly over the years following, when I stopped my jousting career, and those two elements started to shift, and the other part of me that was the observer started to become more prevalent in my life, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we talked earlier, I believe that every step we take in our lives is a step towards our purpose. So how did that serve you, your acting career?
Well, one of the ways, I think probably the biggest way, is as a trained actor. I'm not just, somebody who just decides, one day I want to act. I actually have my degrees in that. And
you're not just an acting actor.
Right. And so in studying acting, when you're tearing apart a script that you're working on, there's three ways that I would always analyze a script. And in the first read-through, I would look at what the writer said about the character. And the writer might say stuff like, he's 38 years old, tall, dark hair, handsome, whatever the description the author may make about the character. And to me, in life, that's what we were bestowed with in our physical being. The second read-through, I would go through and see what did the character say about himself. And so, in other words, is there any line in the character or any line in the play or script where the character might say, "I'm your worst nightmare," or something crazy like that, that gives you some insight into what the character thinks about himself. Mm-hmm. And then the third read-through I would do would be to look at what do other people in the script say about the character, and especially if they say it to their face or if they say it about them behind their back, because those also, help to establish, if someone else is saying this about my character, what are those aspects when I'm creating the character that I will take on? Now, where this relates to us in life is that we do the same thing. We say stuff about ourselves on a regular basis that keep us living that way. So if I say, I'm just not a morning person, or I'm lazy, or I'm a procrastinator, we help to actually solidify those characteristics in ourselves. And similarly, if other people are saying stuff about us, either to our face or to other people, Michael's always late, he's never on time, they actually are helping to keep me in that framework. Does that sound a little crazy to you?
Not at all.
Okay, good. Because the example I like to give for people who are just trying to wrap their mind around that, well, just because someone thinks that of you, how does that keep you there? Well, it's like the double-blind study in the pharmaceutical industry, where they know that if the doctor knows whether he's giving you the placebo or the drug, his anticipation of your outcome, his expectations on whether you will get better or not, actually influence whether you get better or not, even though you're the one taking the drug. And we do this in life with each other. So if you have an expectation of your spouse to get angry about something, well, you've increased the likelihood, even if it's only a fraction, but you've increased the likelihood that she will indeed get angry about that. And so the other piece of the art of forgetting in my book is how to let go of these things so that we're able to show up in our full being and our full potential on a regular basis, because we're not providing these self-limiting thoughts. And similarly, we open up the world for other people to show up in our lives without creating an encasement for them to show up. So I try to avoid, I'm not very good at this yet, by the way, but I practice trying to not make statements like, oh, honey, you always do it this way, or you always this or that, because that then is just reinforcing it. So that's also in my book.
I like that. I think about that a lot with my 10-year-old daughter. And, we read a lot of things about what kind of messaging girls need. And some people won't tell their children that they're beautiful, because they want them, girls particularly, because they want them to, think differently about themselves. But I think that's okay. So I'm always conscious of what I'm saying in that same realm that you're talking about.
Yeah, I felt a tinge of sadness when I heard you say that
it makes me sad too. So I'm a big believer, and I tell my daughter she's beautiful. She is. Yeah. I tell her she's beautiful and smart. I tell her both of those things at the same time, and I think that'll work out just fine for her.
Me too.
So we'll see. So going back to what you were just talking about, for you specifically, how did acting take you to where you are? Like, why was it important for you to be an actor?
Yeah, man, we're going way back now, or ancient history here. When I was in...
And we don't have to stay there, but for people, and the reasons that I ask these questions are, for people that are doing a specific thing and they have their identity wrapped around what they're doing today, you've really changed your life. And changing from being an actor to being where you are today is a big jump, or seemingly could be. So I think that's important for folks to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, So I guess let's start just by saying that when I was in fourth grade, that was when I knew my purpose, that I wanted to be an actor. And it started out, I was in a fourth grade class production of The Prince and the Pauper, and I was just playing like fourth spear from the left. I mean, literally, I think I had one line. And the kid who was playing the pauper, one of the lead characters, could not for the life of him remember his lines. And about a day, maybe 2 days before the performance, the teacher said, look, we're going to have to cancel because you can't remember your lines, and we just can't do the show this way, having a prompter read every other line to you. And I raised my hand. I said, I know his lines. And the teacher was, at first he was just in disbelief. And,
like, what's your name?
Yeah.
Who are you?
And how do you know these lines? And she wanted to test me on it, and she saw that I do. And I think I've always had a great memory, which is strange now that I'm writing a book called The Art of Forgetting. But just from hearing them in rehearsals, I memorized them. And so I took over that character, and I loved it. And, as they say, that's when I was bit by the bug, and I knew that, that's what my life was going to be. And I don't know that I had, especially at that age, an underlying purpose to my acting, but I do feel like that as I grew and matured with that as a profession, that I just felt like I was here to entertain people, that I was here to give them a brief respite from the worries of their day, some relaxation, some enjoyment, some entertainment. And this is where things got a little wonky for me. So you mentioned about, how that then shifted to what I'm doing today. When my son was born, he's almost 13, we were living in L.A., and I was still acting, but not, constant. And he was born, and my wife and I decided that we did not want to raise him in the L.A. smog. And I certainly didn't want to continue on as a father with the acting lifestyle. I mean, I would be gone for a month at a time to go off on a shoot. Or the other aspect, too, was financially. It's hills and valleys. You might work and make good money for a month or two and then have a dry spell for 3 months. And so I also felt like that's not a good way to raise a family. So we left L.A., and Angie, I floundered for, probably 7 or 8 years as I was searching for my voice, my purpose. And I felt like if I'm not an actor anymore, what am I? What am I here to do? And I don't know if you're familiar with David Data. Do you know his work?
Keep talking, please.
Okay. So David is the author of The Way of the Spiritual Man. And the thing that I went to do a conference with him, and he set my mind at ease about this and made it all okay. It's just like, hey, your purpose can end in a moment, and then it's time to sit down and figure out, okay, now what's my purpose? And it was really moving for me to let go of that. I started to feel some ease and just, okay, so it's okay that I'm no longer acting. It's not like I'm not on purpose. It's simply that purpose is over, and now I need to find a new purpose. And so that's when I really started working on my book. I started coaching. I started getting my voice out there. And still a little bit, it hadn't fully landed. And then when I started my podcast, I felt like, okay, this is it. I found my voice. I found my purpose, and I'm back on track.
And so what do you think your purpose is today?
So my purpose right now, I consider myself a conscious thought evangelist. And my goal is to get the word out there to people that are seekers. I think we all at some point, and it could be at any age, because I've experienced in meeting people who are at this level at 20, but I think at some point we all realize there's more to life, there's more to what we are here to do as humans being than make a buck, go through the day-to-day, breathe in, breathe out, die. I think there's more to it. And I know that it took me, I think I found it a little bit later in life. And so my goal, my purpose is to get the word out there that there are other ways to live consciously and find that there's so much more important elements that we're here to experience than just the day-to-day.
I love that. How do you think knowing that has changed how you live your life?
It's been super freeing to a large degree. As you mentioned in my bio, I practice Buddhism, and it's just opened up a space for me. I don't get stressed out over things as much because I know that it's all passing. We're all passing. When you look at the time span that we live, even if we live a long life as a human being, we're only here the blink of an eye. And even further, the entirety of the span of man's existence in the scheme of the universe is less than the blink of an eye. I mean, we're here such a short time. And so I feel a lot less stress about stuff, knowing as well that I'm creating my reality, and so I get to choose. And so those types of elements just make my life so much more easeful.
Since you mentioned that you're a Buddhist, let's talk about that for a little bit. So were you raised as a Buddhist? What were your religious and spiritual beliefs when you were younger, and how did they progress to today?
Sure. Yeah, I was born and raised Catholic, and I grew up in the church system, the Catholic Church. I was an altar boy for a while. But as much as I learned the scripture and found some of it to resonate with me, I probably found an equal part that didn't resonate with me. And as I got older and started to question that, it made me really want to look at, well, what do I believe? What is out there that really matches me more thoroughly, more completely? And then I started to learn more about Buddhism, and I guess I really started to learn a bit more about it when I was in my mid-20s. And so as that evolved and I started reading more material, and I realized, okay, this resonates with me. This sounds and feels real. And I want to just add a little piece here, is that I don't believe in Buddhism as a religion. I don't think it's religion. I think man has, to some degree, tried to turn it into one. But I think of Buddhism as simply a philosophy for living. And to me, that's very different than a religion.
Can you say a little more about that?
Yeah, so as a matter of fact, there was one Buddhist group that I got involved with for a little while that I felt like they had turned it into a religion. They had created a church-like setting. It was like they wanted to take the teachings of the Buddha and put it into a Christian setting where people would go and pray and meet once a week to do that, and then go about their lives living whatever way they were going to live. And that started to feel too religiously church-like to me. And part of it, maybe I'm a little bit jaded, but growing up Catholic, I saw so many people who were churchgoers make their appearance and then go back out into the world and live life in a way that was un-Christ-like. And they could be mean and tyrannical or total jerks or perverts or whatever, but they weren't living what they were professing to be. It was like just carrying the title but not doing the work. And so similarly in this particular sect of Buddhism, I felt like, oh no, they're just doing the same thing. They're just changing the doctrine is different, but everything else is the same. And so I quickly left that group and have found one that I think is a great fit for me, and that's in the Theravadan tradition, which, if you know Buddhism at all, you'll know there's several different traditions of Buddhism. But what I like about the Theravadan tradition is that it's not church-like. Yeah, you'll go do a meditation sit, and a Dharma reading, but it's not a church-like, it's not a prayer setting, and they don't diss the other sects. It's just very open, and that's one thing that I feel like in a lot of Buddhism there is the crossover where it's okay to kind of go between, and it's still absolutely fine.
I'm not a Buddhist, but here in San Diego we have Deer Park Monastery, which is Thich Nhat Hanh's one of Thich Nhat Hanh's homes here in the U.S. And we're very lucky. We're very lucky to have that kind of a setting to be able to partake. You can go for the day. You can experiment. I don't know if that's the kind of Buddhism that you're talking about, but are you a follower of Thich Nhat Hanh?
I am. Yeah, I love his work.
Yeah. Well, maybe you'll come down to San Diego and we'll go sit together.
That would be awesome.
For a day.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And I even want to add this little piece to it as well, that, especially touching on the part that I don't think it's a religion, is that I believe you can be a Catholic Buddhist. I can believe you can be a Jewish Buddhist, because your religion can be totally separate, and Buddhism is still, to me, it's a philosophy for life. It's a way to live that I think is highly effective and beautiful.
Right. So let me ask you, what do you believe about God?
Oy vey. Yeah, so I believe that there is one consciousness, and you can call that God if you want. I don't like to refer to it as God because of all the connotations that go along with that, but I believe that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and that this spirituality, this spiritualness, that we are all connected, it only feels to us because of this accidental consciousness that we have, it feels to us that we are different. It feels to us that we are separate than each other. But I believe that we are all one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what word would you use in place of using the word God?
I don't know. Universal consciousness?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Okay. All right. And thank you for that.
Yeah.
And so how do you practice that? What is your daily practice of Buddhist activities or whatever activities that you have to stay on track?
Yeah, sure. Well, it kind of permeates everything that I do. So one of the things is about mindfulness. I think it's probably the underlying aspect of Buddhism that holds it all together. The glue is mindfulness. And, mindfulness can be practiced no matter what you're doing. It can be as simple as, doing the dishes, doing them mindfully. There's some Buddhist sayings that, when you're chewing, notice that you're chewing. When you're drinking, notice that you're drinking. Things like that. So it's really something that can permeate your practice all day long, is to notice it. And so for me, it's like it doesn't separate it doesn't. I guess the way that it separates is when I fall asleep. And by that I mean I go into autopilot, or my mind, while I'm doing one thing, my mind goes off in some crazy tangent, worrying about something else, or thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow, or playing over a conversation I had with somebody. Then I'm no longer present. And so for me, the important part of the practice is shortening the gap between, I noticed that my mind has been off on this thing. Let me come back to being present with what I'm doing. So between the time that you start to go off track and the time that you notice that you went off track, so my goal is to shorten that gap so that I can catch it faster and bring myself back to being present.
And what does that for you? Do you do something every day when you get out of bed or at night? As you were saying, your practice is all day long?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is all day long. And one of the things that I think is helpful for me is I do meditate as much as possible, but even more importantly, I think it's great that I'm part of a tribe of people who call each other on it. So if I'm not being present, my wife will call me on it. She'll say, "Where are you right now? Come back here," and vice versa. So we support each other in staying present. And we also have built a tribe of our friends around who are in the same type of work that also help to keep us present. And the other piece is, just as we were speaking, that last part that I was talking, I noticed my dog was making some noise in the background and scratching on, playing with the dog in the mirror, the other dog. and so part of me was like, okay, do I stop the interview? So my mind started to go, even as I'm talking to you, my mind in the background is going, do I mention this? Do I stop Bella from doing this? Do I just allow it go and assume that you will say anything if there's a problem with it? So all of these things, our mind can roll off all of this stuff, which eats away at my being present with you and what I was saying to you. And so I decided to, let it go, come back, be present with Angie, and talk about what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, hello, Bella. We appreciate that you contributed to our interview.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago, when I interviewed Susan Piver, there were birds all around her, and there was also construction in the background, which I think she was concerned about, which we couldn't hear any of that. But the birds played a beautiful song the entire time that we were talking, And so, that's part of our daily life, and particularly interesting that Bella would decide to make an appearance when we're talking about staying focused and being and our daily practice. So we appreciate that.
Absolutely. It's one other way that it shows up that the universe is for us.
The universe is for us. And what do you mean by that?
Well, I think that we're given exactly what we need. So as spiritual beings, here having a certain experience, we've come here to get something on a spiritual level, some learning. And because we're part of this universal consciousness, that the universe will provide for us exactly what we need. Now, the challenge is that from our human perspective, it's not always going to feel that way. It's going to feel like, why on earth would you give me cancer now? Or why would you cause this to happen? But I believe that it's all for us. And if we just look at it, okay, so what is in this for me to learn? What am I supposed to get out of this? And if we can focus on that, I think we can appreciate just about everything that's happening, and we can learn our lessons faster so that things don't have to happen over and over again.
Right. It goes back to what you were saying before, like cancer comes into your life, God forbid, but cancer comes into your life, and if you're a person that's got that story, these things always happen to me, now I'm a goner, this is the last one, or, hey, there's a lesson, there's something new here for me to go engage, it's time for me to make a change, I've got to do something different. Many people believe that we can heal cancer on a dime based on our own behavior.
Yeah.
So I want to stay in that school of thought, personally.
I would agree with you.
So you mentioned earlier, did you have anything else you wanted to say about Bella or that?
No, she seems to have quieted down right now.
Good. Well, we appreciate her. You mentioned before Landmark Education and Tony Robbins. Were there any other tools that you've used over the years to get to know yourself better and step up to this new purpose?
Yeah, so studying with David Data was very helpful. Gay and Katie Hendricks, I studied with them, terrific coaches and authors. And then tons of books that I've read along the way that have all had a terrific impact on me. I think it's so important. There's such a wealth of information available to us out there. And if we just embrace it, I think all of us, we have the potential to improve our lives 100-fold if we just take it.
Very nice.
Yeah.
What are you hoping that's next for you in this path that you're walking?
Yeah, I love that you asked that question, Angie, because literally just maybe 30 minutes before getting on the call with you, I was laying out some designs, half dream-like, half goal-like. And that is, I was thinking of creating a conscious network of podcasts. And so as opposed to just having my own podcast and two, which I'm, having the second one about ready to launch, I thought, well, what if I were to create a network of podcasts that all deal with similar issues so that we could cross over and share audience and share resources and really just use it to expand, to get the word out there in a larger way, to get more clout. Because, as just doing a private little podcast, it's often hard to get the major recognition you might normally want. So I thought, maybe a network is in my future.
I think we talked about that briefly one evening in passing.
Yeah.
As you well know, for any of you listening, the event that we just came back from was jam-packed with events and lots of information. Our brains are completely full. But one of the things that I love about the podcasting group of folks that I've met is the collaborative nature of the group of people and the industry as a whole. Would you agree with that?
Oh, totally. I've never seen an industry quite like it.
And I think it's a little bit the signs of the time that we're in right now. It's much more a flavor of collaboration than it was, say, 5 to 10 years ago. But this particular industry is very helpful of each other, and people have big whys for the reasons that they're wanting to get their word out to the world.
Yeah,
and it's not just to make money or to sell books, or it's a heartfelt reason many times.
Yeah, and Angie, I think you just landed on it there, and with the why piece, I think that's what we all have in common is that we're all doing this for a reason that's bigger than ourselves, and I think that gives us this awesome thread of connection that makes us want to support each other even more.
Right. Right. Sometimes, maybe, 10 or 20 years, some would say, and I think some folks, I heard this at the conference that we were at, are you having people on your show that are in the same segment that you're in? Then you're crazy. I heard that from a radio person. But to me, the more people that can hear the great work that you're doing, and I've been on your show as well, the more people that are in your audience that can hear the great work that I'm doing, the end result of that, in my hopes, are that someone will take action and they become more conscious and change their own life, which changes 100 people's lives, and they change more people's lives. And as a whole, our society becomes more conscious, and we solve some of the world's problems together. And to think that we could do that from 2 microphones sitting in our office is an overwhelming thought.
It really is, and I like to call what you're talking about there the big win, and I think it's totally doable.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I totally think it's good. And one of my standard questions I like to talk about is synchronicity. And I think that synchronicity is everywhere, but there's an aspect of that with what kind of synchronicity are you going to allow to be seen to you? So what do you think about that? What do you think about synchronicity and allowing it to come into your life?
Well, I think the bigger challenge around synchronicity is not recognizing it and then missing it, because I think synchronicity is so important to stay open to it, and when it knocks on your door, let it in. I mean, I think that, again, that's the universal consciousness. It's the universe saying, hey, here you go. Let's play this tune.
Do you think that you've had knocks on the door that you've ignored or not noticed?
Yeah, I think fewer as I get older, but definitely early on, I probably missed so many knocks on the door. I think I had my headphones going too loud.
Many of us. Well, the time wasn't right yet.
That's true too. Yeah.
But it's time now. Let's talk a little bit about money. Are you making more money or less money than you were as an actor? Are you worried about it?
Yeah, isn't that the $64,000 question? I am making money. I'm not making more money than I did as an actor, although that's even hard to gauge because, as I said, sometimes you might go 2 months without making anything, but in the day when I was acting, I would make $2,000 a day for working on a film, and so I'm not making that. But my show is starting to make money. As a matter of fact, I just landed some sponsors, so that's good. And I just have to add, though, that's not the most important piece of it to me. I got to say, and I mentioned this to my wife the other day, it's like if we didn't need money to pay the bills, we were independently wealthy, I would do it anyway, just because of the feedback that I've gotten from people who've said, I heard something that one of your guests said on the show, and it really made a major impact on my life. Thank you so much. To me, that's payment enough. But sadly, I'm not independently wealthy, and so I do have to pay the rent and put food on the table, and we're getting there. Right.
So it doesn't matter right now. It's what you're doing is more important than buying the next biggest car or the next biggest house. Or
absolutely.
Do you think your values are the same today as they were 10 years ago?
No, totally different. As a matter of fact, it's interesting seeing my son, who's now 13, looking at cars and going, oh, isn't that a cool car? I want to have something like that when I grow up and everything. And I'm like, well, to me, I used to be that way as well, and now it's more like, if the car gets me where I need to go and it'll haul the stuff that I need to haul, like, because we take our kayaks out a lot, and so then it's a fine car. And as long as it runs and it's safe, those are the more important things to me now than having something that's going to be a status symbol or anything like that. And similarly with the house. I don't need a huge home. I want to live in an area that's comfortable and safe and, in near proximity of the things that I love.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah.
And have money in your pocket to be able to afford great experiences when they come along and entertain great folks and be able to do those things. I'm right there with you. Do you ever encounter resistance?
Resistance on which front?
To what you're doing with your purpose and your work?
I guess the only resistance I've encountered from time to time, and it's very minor resistance, but it's been a little bit. My wife from time to time will go, "When are you going to start making money with this thing?" Because she's really been supporting us, and I so appreciate it. She is also a coach and a yoga instructor as well, and she's been supporting the efforts for the podcast, and so anybody who's listening to my show, just know that she's actually supporting you too. So
wonderful,
yeah.
Wonderful. Well, prosperity has a way of working itself out, so we'll see what is in the future for you.
Exactly.
Can I ask you a lightning round of yes or no short answer questions?
Sure.
Do you think passion and purpose are the same things?
No.
Do you think everybody has a life purpose?
Yes.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how important is following your joy and igniting your life purpose?
10.
Did you ever quit your job to follow your purpose?
Yes.
Do you think somebody else needs to quit?
Yes.
What brings you great, great joy?
Gosh, so much, but I guess my family connection.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think you answered this already, but if you unexpectedly amassed a good-sized fortune, what would you do differently?
Probably not much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And just in getting ready to close, tell us, what should listeners learn from your life?
That it's important to keep looking. It's important to stay awake and just keep searching for that thing that really fills your heart. And you'll know it when you find it.
Very nice. Anything that you'd like to recommend if someone's listening today and they don't know where to start? What's the first step they should take?
Well, first step would be to subscribe to Life Purpose Advisor podcast and keep listening.
What a nice man.
Well, it's true. It's true. It's shows like yours, Angie, that really support people in so many ways, you know, pointing north, if you will. You know, it's the compass. And so I so appreciate your show and you know, my show as well. There are shows out there that's what we're up to. So look, you know, you'll find great resources out there, and Life Purpose Advisor is one of them.
And they're free. Thank you for saying that, but they are free, and as you mentioned, we're not paid to do what we're doing here, at least not today. Thank you for that. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
The best way would be to go to my website, and that's www.michaelneeley.com, and Michael is spelled A-E-L. People tend to mix that part up. And Neeley is N-E-E-L-E-Y.com. And from
Michael, please.
Yeah, michaelneeley.com. And from there, they can connect to my show. My podcast is hosted there, and they can learn about my coaching and my book and all the different aspects, and they can see my night picture.
Your night picture.
Yeah.
Right. Perfect. And we'll just mention the name of Michael's show is Consciously Speaking. You can find him as well. If you're listening today on iTunes, you can click on over and have a listen to what Michael is up to. And you can listen to our interview. I don't remember what episode I am on your show, but you can listen to us talking in reverse about my life on your show.
Absolutely.
And so let's just talk a little bit about your book. So The Art of Forgetting is coming out soon. Where can we get ourselves a copy of it?
Well, it's going to come out right now. The scheduled release date is November 6th, and you'll be able to do pre-orders from my website. But other than that, then when it's available, you'll be able to get it on Amazon. And yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm a little nervous about it because, as you probably are aware, the closer you get to it actually coming out, that's when you're doing all the polishing and the finishing touches, and those sometimes take longer than you think, and it can be a little scary as you're ready to release it because once it's out there, it's out there.
Right. And the authors that I know and the writing that I've done, the editing is sometimes the hardest part.
Yeah.
And you always think, oh, I should have added this and I should have added that. And that drawing that line in the sand and saying there's another book inside me and it's okay. That's the hard part.
Yeah, totally.
So anything you want to mention that we missed today?
No, it's been just such a wonderful conversation with you, Angie. I so appreciate your ease and your style and, your insightful questions.
Well, thank you, sir. I'm so honored to have you on, and I will do it again, I hope.
Me too.
You've been listening to the Life Purpose Advisor podcast with me, your host, Angie Swartz, and my wonderful guest today, Michael Neeley. I hope you've enjoyed what we've talked about today. If you'd like more information about working with me and finding your purpose, you can do that at lifepurposeadvisor.com. I hope you'll let me know how you liked our show today. You can drop me an email at Angie@lifepurposeadvisor.com, and we will see you next time.